Fantastic. Thank you all for joining today, and welcome to San Diego. Welcome to FinOps X. My name is Sam.
My name's Matt. Good to be here. Good to see you.
And we're going to be walking through a couple of very exciting updates today for Flexera. So as you see on the slide, this ain't your typical Flexera. And both of us, we're part of the now conjoined Flexera company, myself, FinOps Advisory, and then from ProsperOps, Matt Stellpflug. What we're going to be covering for you today is a couple of great announcements. I don't know if any of you can catch up from the keynote this morning, but a lot's been changing over the past 5 to 6 months. Same goes for Flexera. I don't know, raise of hands, who remembers the Artemis II launch back in April? Anyone? Yeah, it feels like years from now. So there's been a lot of development behind the scenes, and we're excited to share some of that with you today. We're going to walk through a couple of key updates, specifically kind of tying back to the announcements this morning. Flexera One for complete control. AI for FinOps, FinOps for partners. We're going to cover automated rate optimization, as well as autonomous pod and workload optimization. And they're going to round out on data cloud optimization and AI value. So let's talk about, for Flexera, how we've been developing our FinOps capabilities to align to where the market is going, right? We heard this morning from JR and a few of the other folks from Prudential and SAP talk about AI spend being pervasive across the industry, across all these different technology, historically disparate silos, these different technology lanes. And Flexera's taken an approach of having to have a solid and singular technology stack, a platform, to be able to confidently address your AI spend, both being able to see it all, have that visibility and insight, and then ultimately being able to control it and govern it. And so Flexera's approach is understanding the underlying ecosystem of different AI vendors. Right? So from Gemini to Oracle, Databricks, and everything on the bottom, having complete visibility across your agents, SaaS, the AI spend and services in the cloud, even into data center and devices. And we saw some of that today with the edge computing in the Mac Minis. Data confidence, so understanding then with that visibility that we now have, how can we normalize that, categorize it, enrich it with additional business context, and then provide additional insights where there may be some data gaps. Technology insights, kind of think of this as the third layer up from that bottom ecosystem, understanding spend and risk by chatting with AI. So how can we engage and leverage that information and those insights that we're raising for more downstream outcomes through customizable dashboards and reporting to automated distribution of those reports and dashboards and notifications. Second to last, autonomous management. So how do we leverage, in additional to that chat kind of interface, which we'll show a little bit here in a moment, things through machine learning, workload automation, leveraging APIs and MCPs that not just Flexera is developing, but also you as end users are likely developing internally. So how can you kind of swing by and leverage Flexera's data as a fuel source for your downstream initiatives? And at the end of the day, with this technology stack of these additional layers, you're able to drive the outcomes that matter to you, whether that's AI management, cloud management, SaaS, or IT asset management. And so how does this work in practice? Well, we have all probably on our bingo cards crossed off AI and token and tokenomics, and I've already seen some internal mock-ups of Tokenatron and Tokemon, got to catch them all. And so I'm sure we're all starting to see this, and from Flexera's perspective, it's about leveraging AI and this technology intelligence that Flexera is providing to provide those insights first and foremost, leveraging agents and automation to ultimately drive direction and deliverables and outcomes, all leveraging that underlying technology inventory that we've been collecting from the ecosystem of solutions that you're using. And so Flexera's core capabilities, especially from a FinOps perspective, are predominantly around that visibility, governance, and compliance, and then two core kind of outcomes around rate and workload optimization. At the end of the day, whether it's AI or another term, tokens, whether it's assets, from a data center perspective or cloud bills. At the end of the day, we want to optimize and be as efficient as possible. And so Flexera's platform leverages these capabilities that we've been producing and that we've produced for some time and innovating on to drive those outcomes that you see below under rate and workload optimization. And so we'll cover some of this today in more detail. So first, AI for FinOps. I'm going to show you a slide, and then we're going to go through a video. And because this is demo magic, we're going to condense that video into a minute or 2 minutes. But just imagine the hamsters hard at work on that wheel. So announcing Flexera's first FinOps chat assistant. So this assistant would sit with you as a practitioner, as you're logging in, maybe a Monday morning, looking to understand what's changed over the weekend from a cloud spend perspective, from an AI spend perspective. Potentially you're getting ready for your first O3 with the manager, and you have a couple of queries and prompts that you want to provide it. This interface will be automatically available within the platform with no setup required. And so one of the things that is differentiating here, and one of the things that we're really excited about, is that this isn't just a chat interface where we can ask questions of ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that, right? We're asking it to provide us some information, right? Information that then we can derive insights from, ultimately then acting on, whether that's sending a dashboard, whether that's providing anomalous spend detection and reasons as to why, and some more that you'll see here in a moment. And we've done this in a way that allows us to not have hallucinations, right? So it's API and MCP in combination to eliminate those hallucinations, which is going to be crucial when we start looking at spend that we can't exactly understand at first glance, right? We want to be able to trust that source data. And then generating those personal insights, so leveraging this as an initial stopping point to then drive those outcomes down the road. If we can go back a slide or play the video that was associated, that would be great. If there's no video, we can proceed to AI for partners.
We're doing
FinOps for partners. All right, we'll proceed, and if that circles back around, then great. We'll facilitate that. So that video that you would have seen, condensed in 2 minutes, articulates a couple of key prompts that we provided. Some examples being what is my cloud spend today, right? What is the highest amount of cloud spend and what services are behind it? It would think and query and provide then the response, some key notes as to why it is that high. And then it would also follow up with, out of the spend, what are the key AI spend services that are generating these increase of costs, and provide a dashboard that I can then distribute to my colleagues as well. And so that video will be probably skipped. So we'll jump on to the next section. So the next section that we were going to speak about was the FinOps for partners. And this is key. Just quick question, any partners in the room, MSPs? Okay, we got a couple. Awesome, cool. Maybe some shy hand raisers, that's okay too. So we have heard loud and clear from the partner community that to better serve your customers, you need a single platform to drive some of this enterprise growth within not just your organization, but within the customer's organizations as well. So ultimately getting value in the expertise that your teams are able to provide. And so Flexera has provided over the past couple years more and more capabilities to extend your offerings and ultimately drive more value for your customers as well. From left to right, IT visibility, right? Getting better visibility of your IT assets from a software and hardware perspective, all the way through to workload optimization on the far right, kind of more that key DevOps persona. And so as you're engaging with customers, right, or your counterparts, and you hear certain triggers that may indicate they're struggling with not just cloud spend, but potentially also SaaS spend, you have within your singular platform a means to quickly show some value around ways that they can optimize their SaaS environment as well. And so we're excited to continue enriching that through additional capabilities, which we'll be announcing tomorrow during the keynote. There's a key for you, keynote join that, and you'll hear some more things. Specifically within the FinOps portfolio, there's kind of a bookend of modules and capabilities that we can enable to drive further value. As FinOps is expanding to AI spend management, this is going to become more of a requirement as partners work with customers in the enterprise and SMB space, because the questions and the challenges aren't just siloed in individual technologies. And so starting from the left, cloud license management. Who here has heard of the recent wave of needing to optimize software costs in the cloud, right, as like the next, okay, a couple more hand raisers, that's great. This is a key optimization opportunity for organizations to understand what they're entitled to from a contractual perspective, and leveraging those best practices to gain better efficiencies in cloud instances by leveraging things like bring your own license instead of pay as you go. That information is paramount when you pair it with your contracts and IT asset management program as well. SaaS management, cloud migration planning, because not everyone's in the cloud all the time, everywhere, all at once, as much as people like to say that everyone's in the cloud. Like, there's still people on-prem, that's okay. So cloud migration, if that's the desired journey, all the way through into cloud cost optimization and workload optimization, which we'll cover. So for the partner community specifically, what's exciting here and what's unique is being able to manage this at scale. So we've got some partners here at the conference with billions of dollars in spend under management. And what we're able to do confidently within Flexera is be able to provide these additional capabilities at the varying levels, L2, L3, and so on, within those organizations to make serving up these additional value streams possible. And not just in a kind of one-and-done management perspective, but in an ad hoc fashion as well. So as you're working with customers and you find that there's additional opportunities to provide those value add assessments or engagements, you can easily enable these on the fly. And they're fully R-backed, and they're fully supported from a data kind of isolation and an integration perspective. So the key thing here being effortless organizational scale management, clear allocation of spend across the varying L1, L2, L3s, and then overall simplified management of your customers. We're also excited to announce some more billing plans, some better ways to manage this from a UI and UX perspective using our billing rules engine. So flexible billing plans that you can create, that you can augment, and that you can deliver to your stakeholders, clearly identifying that cost that's been allocated, any adjustments that you may need to have made, and then simple billing rules for those complex billing elements, which are only going to get more complex with the rise of AI costs and the tokenomics discussions that we had this morning. So being able to adjust those rates on an ad hoc basis and sequentially is important. As you can see here, an example of creating very easily in a tabular view that bill and that chargeback methodology that you can easily allocate that spend across any vendor, any cloud service provider, whether that's the traditional AWS, GCPs, and Azures of the world, OCI, but also any other vendor as well from a SaaS perspective. Next, we're going to talk about autonomous rate optimization, and I'm going to pelt Matt with the clicker as I casually give him the ball.
The power. Thanks all. As already established, my name's Matt. I like math. I like how objective it is. Super quick backstory. I was one of those engineers who was voluntold to get into FinOps. In hindsight, I'm grateful for that opportunity. But the situation was I was hired as a cloud engineer to do a bunch of lift and shift. After, let's say, 18 months or so of doubling the cloud bill every 2 months, the most predictable thing happened. Finance said, whose cloud bill is this and why are we doing this, right? Like that bill shock event occurred. And of course they put the call out to IT and finance says, hey IT, you gotta give us someone that can help us figure out this bill to understand who's spending what and why. That someone happened to be me. And as time progressed, I did less engineering work and more FinOps work, which I really enjoyed and dug into. And on that FinOps journey, I eventually stumbled across ProsperOps, who I now work for, of course. But ProsperOps solves rate optimization in an incredibly compelling way. And that's the topic I want to discuss with you today. So here's the situation. You're on a FinOps team. You're doing FinOps well. You've got the KPIs that you know that matter to you. You have unit economics. You've got good lines of communication with business units and app owners. You've got reporting, showback, and/or chargeback. You're doing the thing. But the uncomfortable truth, I think, is that most teams, even great teams, cannot continuously solve rate optimization. So in other words, they're leaving significant savings on the table because the cloud bills things like compute per second, per minute, let's just say in simple terms, per hour. So every hour that isn't optimized in terms of rate optimization is a forfeiture of savings opportunity. So it needs to be automated. So, okay, let's buy some commitment-based discounts, savings plans, reservations, CUDs if you're in Google Cloud. This is a math problem, but it's relatively complex, and it's complicated by spiky ephemeral workloads. There's types of cyclicality, so there's daily cyclicality. There's weekly cyclicality, which is pretty familiar probably, like weekend usage is lower than weekday usage. There's lift and shift in which you're going to turn a bunch of stuff on and then right size in the weeks and months that follow. This all creates uncertainty with how do you procure, how do we commit ourselves to get that discount that comes along with it. So ProsperOps, I guess, enters and solves that problem. And what ProsperOps is an autonomous cloud discount management engine for AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Our platform autonomously purchases discount instruments on our customers' behalves. They own the discount instruments. We operate within service terms of each respective cloud provider. And the platform seeks to maximize savings and minimize risk associated with the commitments. What I mean by risk specifically is like the term lock-in, so like the 1 year, the 3-year term, right? Additionally, the platform has insights and quantifies performance, and there's some reporting that kind of augments FinOps functions. So speaking of performance, how do we measure that? Effective savings rate, I'm sure this is familiar to a lot of you in the room, but ESR, as I'll refer to it from now on, is the North Star rate optimization KPI. This is the one FinOps KPI that your CFO should care about. Individual metrics like coverage and utilization in isolation actually aren't particularly useful. It's actually very easy to achieve 100% coverage. Just overcommit your portfolio. It's actually very easy to have perfect utilization. Just undercommit your portfolio. We know that this is flawed logic potentially, but it just illustrates that those are part but not all of the solution. So effective savings rate, I should just say explicitly, is the confluence of the discount rate itself, coverage, utilization, any waste that occurred, and any fees that were incurred to achieve the result. So again, it's like the net, what did I actually save as a percentage compared to undiscounted rates? Okay. Commitment lock-in risk, the sort of sister metric to ESR. This is a quantification. It's a number, and it's in months. And it basically quantifies how long does my commitment portfolio, my RIs and savings plans and CUDs, how long am I locked in to a given cloud provider via these commitments? So we seek to minimize this. So getting into the actual operation day-to-day of the platform, it all, of course, begins with data. And what we mean by this is constructing a reliable view of the engineering environment so we can have something to base those purchases upon. And there's a lot of special sauce here. We sometimes have to join an API data set with an actual data set, like a cost and usage report or a data export. Data recency and data granularity are our focus here. In other words, the finest granularity data that's available as soon as the cloud provider can furnish it. And sometimes that actually means not even waiting for a data set. For example, in AWS, we use event-driven architecture. So we rely on Event Bridge to stream us telemetry of, live stream of what's happening in the engineering environment. So literally tracking native EC2 state changes. Every stop, start, launch, terminate is tracked with Event Bridge. Thus, we don't have to wait for the cur to show up. So as we ingest that data, the algorithms, of course, are engaged. And the chief instruction, if you will, of the algo is to maximize ESR and minimize CLR. It really is that simple. And I'm talking a lot about automation and like automated purchases of these instruments, and that maybe raises some eyebrows. But to be clear, the algorithms are bound by a strategy that our customers set. We can be stewards and look at the data and suggest, here's what's happened, here's where you've been, we can observe that reality, but pair that with the customer's knowledge of what's on the horizon for their spend and their cloud strategy overall. We put that together and we put parameters and settings on the platform, and that's the bounds within which the algorithms operate. And also there's, of course, predictable sort of portfolio allocation things like how much 1 year versus 3 year, how much spend-based commitment versus resource-based commitment. And then there's sort of like a risk tunable setting as well. And so here's kind of the cool part, the execution engine. Rather than, once we know what to do, rather than submitting more recommendations and just being another dashboard, because that means that someone needs to go notice something in the dashboard, evaluate it, swivel chair, talk to the app team, and then eventually make a procurement decision, that all introduces latency, and latency is the enemy. As I said earlier, every hour that goes by that isn't optimized is a forfeiture of savings. So get the human process out of the way. Again, humans set the strategy, but as operationally, we don't need human in the loop. You want to execute as soon as you see a savings opportunity, you want to execute on that so you realize the savings. Lastly, as a high-level overview of what's going on, the last thing I'll talk about here is reporting and insights. There is, of course, a dashboard to our solution. Since we're an autonomous savings as a service platform, there's really not a lot for anyone to do in our console, but it's a way that you can track your ESR and CLR over time. It's a way to get a couple useful reports. We have a prepayment amortization tracking report if you're using a cloud with prepayments. There's also a very popular showback report, which seeks to equitably allocate the pool of savings and the cost of a given discount portfolio, again, equitably across whatever dimension you select, whether that's a project or a tag or an account or a subscription, right? So taking a look at the actual console, this is an example of a customer of ours that's subscribed to AWS Compute, as you can see in the left nav. Front and center, you see effective savings rate. That 46% that's quoted there, that is pre-PPA. So in other words, it's just the ESR that's realized from reservations and savings plans, because it's AWS. As you see there, that's the 97th percentile. So we've been benchmarking ESRs since 2018, and so we can benchmark that. That's an internal benchmark. In yellow, you see that 2.5 million number. Remember, as I was describing the telemetry ingestion, in AWS, we use Event Bridge to ingest telemetry. So in this singular month, because this is a monthly dashboard, we tracked 2.5 million EC2 state changes and ingested those in real time, and the algorithm evaluated those in real time. And in response, in the green number, the 5,000 number, the platform made 5,000 adjustments to the discount portfolio in response. I don't know a single DIY FinOps team that's getting anywhere near that type of adjustment, granularity, and frequency of purchase and adjustment, right? Speaking of savings, top center, you'll see that for this customer, since they've been engaged with ProsperOps, has saved north of $83 million, above and beyond their pre-ProsperOps ESR and discount performance. In AWS, we also serve non-compute services, RDS, OpenSearch, Elasticcache, and the others. This is now greatly expanded since the release of database savings plans. Our strategy with the RIs is different by necessity because the tax code for like RDS RIs is different than the tax code for EC2 RIs. Nonetheless, we seek to introduce financial flexibility via what we call adaptive laddering, in which we are, I should say the platform is autonomously tuning the purchase frequency and purchase amount of RI ladder purchases. Again, without engagement, but again, bound by the settings that our customers define. It's not just about AWS, of course. We started serving Azure in early 2025. It's been growing really rapidly because in Azure, the reservation discount is really attractive. But managing reservation and reservation exchange is quite burdensome. So flip on the automation switch, subscribe to ProsperOps, and you can have that reservation discount, you can enjoy that, but you don't have any of the operational burden of managing RI exchange, because we take that off your plate. Note also, not just compute, but there's database services, SQL Service, Postgres, MySQL. Similarly for Google Cloud, we blend portfolios of flex-based and resource-based CUDs, and also here we support Cloud SQL. These dashboards look really similar to each other. That's very intentional. We've got lots of multi-cloud customers. And at the end of the day, if you zoom out, blur your eyes enough, all three cloud providers have some form of a spend-based commitment, dollar per hour for a term, and they have some form of a resource-based commitment. And they each have strengths and weaknesses, and so we are always blending and playing those types of discount instruments off of each other and using them strategically. It really is the case that they're both needed, even if you have a preferential like private discount rate that favors one over the other, there's still always a case for blending them to get the maximal ESR. So let me show you some receipts, so to speak. These charts, I'm going to just show a few of quickly, are called spend coverage trend charts. It just looks at, in this case, 12 months of a particular type of usage. This is for Azure Compute. And this group went live with ProsperOps in August of 2025, last August. And you can see prior to ProsperOps, with a yellow band of reservations, it was quite static. And their on-demand was fluctuating somewhat. And then we turned ProsperOps on, and immediately coverage is higher. There's less on-demand. This group's ESR is up 40%. That's percent increase. Here's an AWS example. This is AWS Compute. On that vertical axis, note the smallest number there is 10 million. This is an on-demand equivalent dollars. So for the first 4 or so months on that chart, this group was spending $10 million in AWS Compute pretty consistently. In October, they literally quadrupled their usage, spent over $40 million in that month. And rather than have that be on demand, because it was briefly lived, that green layer is showing our financially flexible portfolio of discount instruments getting into that briefly lived quadruple of compute usage spend, and then quickly back down in November. By December, they're back near their original run rate. Maybe saying the obvious, but if the FinOps team here was DIYing this with only spend-based commitments, and they bought that $40 million peak, they would be grossly overcommitted in the months that come. With ProsperOps, we can cover that briefly lived spike and also sort of undo that commitment thereafter by refinancing it. This is basically like the perfect example of what I mean when I say a financially flexible discount portfolio. Things like savings plans are technically flexible, but this is financial flexibility. Just zooming in a bit, this is just like the other charts, except it's daily granularity. You see a pretty common pattern here, like weekend usage down, 5 business days up. Again, rather than have an immutable line of a savings plan spend that goes, that's overcommitted on the weekend and then undercommitted during the week, we can track that usage dynamically. Again, tracking it in real time. And the last one I'll show you is a group that was trucking along, had modest growth, pretty consistent on-demand and coverage and performance levels. And then they had, as you can see from January to just a couple months ago, they basically cut their compute spend in half. There's a lot of reasons that could have happened. Maybe there was a divestiture. Maybe they just moved some databases that were on EC2 to RDS. Maybe they found some great efficiency in the engineering universe and refactored the workload. The point is, it doesn't really matter why that happened. ProsperOps doesn't need the context from the business as to what's happening or when, because the portfolio is set up to be flexible. And when we pair automation with a financially flexible portfolio, you can do that type of thing. So literally it like unshackles your engineering team and your business from being locked into a given cloud provider, and you can do things like this. So that's my time on rate optimization. I'll give it back to Sam with the next topic.
Perfect, thank you. So it sounds like shifting, yeah. Go, Matt. Sounds like shifting the effort of managing these things, individually and as a team to being automatic saves a lot of time, saves a lot of energy, and it saves a lot of dollars. And so let's talk about what that means when we apply the same autonomous logic from a rate management perspective to workload and pod optimization and right sizing. So Flexera's, through the acquisition of Spot a few years ago or last year, brought forth a set of capabilities predominantly for the DevOps persona, for the engineering team. And with that is what we consider a perfect pair of capabilities to drive the ultimate outcome for organizations. And that is the ability to continuously optimize the workloads, virtual machines, and the containers within a customer's environment, within your environments. And so we do that by allowing engineering and resources to shift their time more towards innovation and more proactive efforts from a FinOps and a DevOps perspective, away from that traditional hands-on management of their environment. And we do that through continuous integration of continuous deployment, and then ultimately driving continuous optimization, right? Very cyclical in nature. And so what we're going to walk through very briefly here is infrastructure optimization or autonomous workload optimization. Right? Specifically for container environments and for VM environments, this with autonomous rate optimization would drive even higher effective savings rates, I would imagine, Matt. Have you seen, in your experience, both worlds aligned?
Yeah. There's a super compelling intersection here because there's, previously these would have been like point solutions, but if we can make the point solutions that are solving different problems, but nonetheless, these are interrelated because, of course, a commitment-based discount portfolio is based upon the workloads that are actually out there, and they need to match. But so let's just say, like, if the container orchestrator can talk directly to the rate optimization platform, then the rate optimization platform need not observe the changes. It can have pre-knowledge, so to speak, directly from the management plane. And so connecting the brains, so to speak, really is sort of like one of these 1 + 1 = 3 situations.
Yeah, or the Romeo to the Juliet, where there isn't a bad ending at the end. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but pulled that out just now. So let's see what this looks like in practice. The autonomous workload optimization for containers specifically, so for pod right sizing, effectively leveraging similar autonomous habits for optimizing that compute, storage, and network. And so looking at auto scaling, bin packing, spot instance, all the things that you've heard before, but shifting that into a continuous optimization lifecycle. And like Matt was saying earlier, every hour you go without automating your commitment management, every minute or 5 minutes you go without optimizing your workloads, that story starts to run on its own, right? Autonomous workload optimization for VMs. So looking at how the infrastructure in the VM is provisioned, right? Leveraging historical values, leveraging utilization, and leveraging an AI-driven selection of rebalancing of cloud price models, we're able to determine the best fit region for those particular instances, leveraging Spot equally in the way that we're leveraging things like RIs and savings plans. And ultimately, allowing your teams to, as Prudential was saying this morning, leverage AI to drive the FinOps program forward and shifting those efforts into more proactive elements across the business, right? More business value, less hands-on engineering. Autonomous infrastructure optimization, some of the key benefits here, right? So again, I mentioned pod-driven auto-scaling, multi-cloud support, so this is going to be across AWS, Azure, GCP, ultimately maxing the usage of existing commitments when paired with something like ProsperOps, and then integrating with infrastructure as code tools, right? So leveraging Terraform, leveraging what works best within your environment to drive this at scale. With enterprise support, because we feel with Flexera, you should, with any enterprise platform, hold accountability for proactive monitoring and enterprise support for the solutions that you invest in. Some additional capabilities for workload optimization, significant savings from leveraging Spot. Time and time again, I work with organizations that feel for production workloads, they can only leverage dedicated instances. Spot may not be applicable because at the rate of change, it can just be picked up. And so by leveraging the workload optimization or autonomous optimization solution by Flexera, it's ultimately aware of those historical patterns, aware of where there's availability for those Spot instances, and being able to make that decision on the fly with confidence and at a very high 9 capability. And so there's been great use cases internally and what we've seen in the market of being able to leverage Spot for production workloads as well, regardless of the industry. ML-backed automation, as we talked about, and then integrated dashboards with the rest of Flexera One with commitment management, and then with the container cost visibility or Kubernetes spend allocation, which is paramount when you're talking about the total cost of ownership of an environment, understanding how those costs that you've been optimizing ultimately get allocated out to the business or to the departments or team, however you see fit. So let's talk about the next section, and we've got a few minutes left, so I might clip through a little bit. We talked about AI spend this morning, tokenomics, tokens, the increased cost of doing business in this day and age. And so the other fun announcement we have is around our data cloud and AI value capabilities. So data cloud, this should look familiar. In 2026 Data FinOps report indicates that data cloud platforms are one of the top challenges to manage today and expected to be in the foreseeable future, right? We see AI being a significant percentage of this. 98% of teams consider managing AI as one of their core remits. SaaS growing, licensing growing, and private cloud still in the mix as well. So specifically our capabilities in this area, and I'll talk about Databricks and Snowflake, data cloud optimization here. Granular cost reporting, right? So being able to understand at a credit and DBU level that breakdown across the business, right? By warehouse, workload, cluster, cost allocation and chargeback to the business as well. So you could say, these parts of the environment are consuming X amount based on how much they've consumed, and they should be charged back, this based on additional, adjustments that you may want to make. And then usage forecasting. So being able to say, based on your historical patterns and your utilization of these data clouds, what are you forecasted to be in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, et cetera? Well, 2 years, that's too far away. All right, maybe we go back to a year. Optimization recommendations to reduce the cost based on utilization, based on right-sizing warehouses, as an example. And then lastly, anomaly alerts. Specifically, being able to understand when there are spikes in the environment based on those particular spend categories or dimensions that I've mentioned, cluster, workload. And this allows organizations to get a clear view of their Databricks and Snowflake environments, data cloud environments, that they haven't had before. And we feel that this is a great extension of kind of core kind of public cloud spend management because of just the rate of adoption of AI-related spend ultimately on the data clouds, at the end of the day. So being able to view spend by usage unit and department, these are all kind of very advanced custom dimensions that we can facilitate through our rule-based dimensions capabilities, and being able to break that down with these out-of-the-box reports and dashboards using that chat FinOps assistant that I was talking about earlier to generate more visualizations and distribute these to maybe the engineers and the analysts that are running the Databricks environment or are accountable for the Databricks environment. I don't know how many people do shame back, but you could facilitate that as well. And then ultimately, using the utilization, identify drivers of cost remediation, cost recommendations to ultimately optimize. Databricks allocation extended, going to the nth level, whether you want to allocate that based on custom business context and metadata, or whether you want to leverage some of the out-of-the-box dimensions that are supported. Recommendations. Recommendations are something that you could act on individually as an individual, but we could also set up autonomous optimization of your data cloud optimization. And we have some very exciting use cases, some very exciting case studies on the success of that, even within Flexera, leveraging it to save a substantial amount of our own Databricks spend as we've used this, right? So kind of drinking our own champagne, so to speak. Key capabilities here being purpose-built for Databricks and Snowflake, so not just a reprocessing of the cloud billing data, direct integrations, so not retrofit from legacy FinOps platforms or solutions. A single source of truth, single pane of glass, depending on your nomenclature. Having all of this data within one platform allows you to drive allocation and total cost of ownership substantially better and with more confidence and alignment than trying to piecemeal from the results of, say, the AWS agent that was announced this morning, right? Great if you're leveraging this AWS, but then what about if you're leveraging Azure? What about if you're leveraging and consuming Databricks? What if you're consuming SaaS and you want to bring all this together into one source? Who owns that? Flexera can own that. So more coverage, zero clutter. I like this because it's end-to-end visibility from reporting at a more kind of higher executive level to individual kind of engineering-based levels as well. Another fun topic of conversation this conference is AI spend visibility. We're really excited about tomorrow's keynote. Chief Product Officer Becky Trevino and Eric Carlin from ProsperOps are going to be talking about some additional capabilities in this space, so stay tuned for that. We've kind of had this figured out in the cloud space for quite some time, and then individually within things like SaaS management, understanding contracts and how SaaS is being, how AI is being consumed in the various services and whatnot. And so within our space, being able to visualize this quite easily within the platform has been something customers have been experiencing for some time. And with additional dimensions that we provide, they're able to get granular breakdown of that AI and ML related spend, similarly to Databricks, based on their department, team, line of business, et cetera. And then ultimately driving recommendations to cost optimize for the AI that you build, and then the AI that you buy, right? So breaking down those costs based on resources, allocating that token usage. So I said token, so I feel like I checked the box for presentations this year. And so that's something that we're excited to bring to the market today. And this is all able to be demonstrated in the booth back in the expo hall. Lastly, this is something that everyone should be familiar with, but this is the FinOps Framework and the latest update. And we're happy that by the innovation and the capabilities that we're releasing, ultimately aligning to wherever your FinOps journey has started or is going, aligning to the domains and capabilities that you require to drive that FinOps program forward, whether that's the public cloud technology stack or whether that's other scopes as well. So thank you. And if you have time tonight, you want to join a fun poolside party, I think, Matt, it's 8-bit party?
The legendary annual 8-bit after party by Pool South. ProsperOps is right next to the Flexera booth. It's E as in Echo 1. ProsperOps will conduct savings analyses that quantify your existing performance and rate optimization, so your ESR, and we can quantify what juice is left to squeeze, so to speak. But yeah, that 8-bit after party is where I'll be as soon as the doors open, so hope to see you there.
Hope to see you there. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.